Have you ever wanted to play a character, like a true shadow warrior? Someone who can slip in and out of danger totally unnoticed, but also bring the pain when they need to. I was thinking about this because of something that happened in my last game. My rogue was breaking into this mage's tower. Classic scenario, right? It was crawling with magical wards and guards with enchanted crossbows. Like every corner was trapped. And I managed to get past most of it, but then I got stuck. Totally cornered, nowhere to hide, and no backup in sight. In that moment, I was like, man, I wish I had some monk abilities. Like imagine a quick stunning strike to take out a guard or a flurry of blows to make an opening. It made me really start thinking about the possibilities of a rogue monk multi-class.
What's really cool about that is it kind of shows the challenge at the heart of any multi-class. It's like trying to master two completely different things at once, and it can be tough to find that balance. But if you get it right, a rogue-monk combo can be a total force to be reckoned with. I remember this one campaign I was in. I played a character who had been exiled from his monastery. Let's just say he liked to bend the rules a little too much. And he ended up falling in with a group of thieves, learned the ways of the rogue, so he had this blend of disciplined fighting and cunning. He could sneak into anywhere completely unnoticed, take down an enemy with one perfect strike, and then vanish like a ghost.
That sounds amazing. So let's break down this build. On the surface, the rogue and the monk seem pretty different. Their playstyles don't exactly match, do they? So how do you make those two work together? Like how do you make a character that's good at stealth A&D combat?
It's all about how their strengths play off of each other. Like, take sneak attack, the rogue's bread and butter. It's all about hitting an enemy when they're vulnerable, getting that extra burst of damage. But then you add in a monk's flurry of blows. Suddenly, you're getting way more chances to use those sneak attacks. You become like a whirlwind of pain.
So basically, the monk's speed gives the rogue more opportunities to do what they do best, and I'm guessing the monk's unarmored movement helps them get into position for those sneak attacks.
Exactly. Unarmored movement isn't just about speed. It's about being agile and moving however you need to. You can dart around the battlefield, flank your enemies, squeeze through tight spaces, and you don't have to worry about heavy armor slowing you down. It's like you're dancing around your opponents. Always stand one step ahead.
I like that. A dance of death. But with a build like this, don't you have to worry about ability scores? It seems like this would be one of those MAD builds, multi-ability dependent.
Oh, absolutely. You need dexterity for attacks, for stealth, for your armor class. You need constitution so you can stay alive. And you need wisdom for those monk abilities. It's a balancing act for sure.
Okay, so what's the best way to handle that balancing act? How do you optimize those ability scores to make this build really sing?
Dexterity is your top priority. At least 16, maybe even higher if you can manage it. That's what makes your attacks hit, keeps you hidden, and lets you move like a shadow. Then you have to balance out your constitution and wisdom. Constitution should be at least 14 so you can take a hit. And you want at least 13 in wisdom so you can use those monk abilities effectively.
So we're talking about a character who's fast, agile, tough, A&D, insightful. Makes sense. But what about class progression? Do you start as a rogue or a monk?
Usually it's best to start as a rogue. That way you get sneak attack and cunning action right away. Those are essential for your combat style. Then, once you've chosen your rogue subclass, you can switch to monk around level 3.
So when you're picking that subclass, are there any that work particularly well with this multi-class? Like, what about assassin or swashbuckler?
You're thinking along the right lines. If you want to maximize your damage and catch enemies off guard, assassin is a great choice. They won't even know what hit them. Swashbuckler is all about that hit-and-run style, dashing in and out of combat with flair. Both of those subclasses can be really strong with this build.
So many choices. My brain is already overloading. What kind of power spikes should I be looking forward to as I level up? What levels should I be really excited to hit?
Monk level 5 is when things get really fun. That's when you get extra attack and stunning strike. And let me tell you, those abilities can change the entire game. Suddenly you're attacking twice every turn, and you can stun your enemies, which leaves them wide open for those sneak attacks.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster for the enemy.
I love it.
But splitting your levels between rogue and monk, doesn't that make those kite points a little hard to manage?
You're right. Managing your key points is important, especially at the lower levels. You have to be careful about when you use things like stunning strike and flurry of blows. But as you level up, you get more key points, so you have more options in combat. It's all about finding the right balance.
Okay, so we've got the ability scores figured out. We have the class progression planned. But we all know that feats can make a big difference. What are some feats that can really take this rogue monk build to the next level?
There are a few that really stand out. Mobile, for example, is perfect if you want to hit and run. Being able to move in, attack, and then back out without provoking attacks of opportunity, that's incredibly powerful, especially with the monk's already amazing mobility. You become like a phantom, striking from the shadows and disappearing before your enemy can even react.
Zipping around the battlefield,
Yeah.
landing sneak attacks, vanishing into thin air. That's definitely my kind of playstyle. What other feats would you recommend?
If you really want to focus on stealth, you can't go wrong with Skulker. It lets you stay hidden even if you miss with a ranged attack. Perfect for someone who likes to operate from the shadows, picking off enemies one by one. And imagine combining that with a spell like Pass Without Trace. Your entire party becomes like ghosts, moving unseen through enemy territory.
Oh man, Pass Without Trace, that's one of my favorites. It's like you're bending reality to your will.
And speaking of bending reality, what about Shadow Touched? That's always been one of my go-to feats for adding some magic to my stealth.
Great choice. Shadow Touch gives you access to spells like invisibility, and that can be a real game changer in the right situation. Need to get into a heavily guarded fortress. Invisibility is your key. And if you want to add even more versatility with spells, Fey Touched is another fantastic option.
Yes, Fey Touched. Love that one. Get access to things like Misty Step, which makes you even more mobile. Or Detect Thoughts, for a little bit of psychic spying. So many options. I'm getting excited just thinking about the possibilities. That's what's so great about this build. It's incredibly versatile and adaptable. You can really customize it to fit your playstyle and whatever challenges your campaign throws at you.
Speaking of customization, what about equipment and magic items? What kind of gear complements this build and really takes it to the next level?
For weapons, you want to think about being flexible. Short swords or darts are really good for this build. They work for both rogue and monk, so you can switch between them easily. And of course, every good rogue needs a thieves kit. And don't forget about a disguise kit. You never know when you might need to blend in or pretend to be someone else.
Those are the basics for sure. But, there's always those magic items that you just really want. What are some of those items that make this build really shine? The ones that make you go, yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Ah, the magic touch. A cloak of elven kind is always a solid choice, especially with all your stealth skills. Imagine this. You're already a shadow, right? But now you're a shadow with a cloak woven from illusions. It's like you become one with the darkness.
Okay, that's pretty cool. What about footwear? You gotta have something to keep those feet quiet and nimble.
You got it. Boots of elven kind. They make you almost completely silent. You can stalk your enemies like a predator. And if you combine those boots with Pass Without Trace, your whole party becomes like a whisper in the wind.
And then there's the ultimate stealth item. The one that makes you completely vanish. The Ring of Invisibility. It's gotta be on every Shadow Warrior's wish list.
No doubt about it. The Ring of Invisibility is a game changer. But remember, it's not just about the items, it's about how you use them, how you combine them with your skills and abilities to create something really special.
Right, it's like those cooking shows where they say the ingredients are important, but it's the chef who makes the magic happen. So let's talk about the chef, the player, the one who's running this rogue monk build. What are some of the advanced techniques and tactics that can take this build to the next level?
We talked about the darkness spell earlier, but that's just the beginning. Darkness combined with Devil's Sight. That's a combo that can turn a whole fight upside down. Imagine you're fighting in a dark dungeon. You cast darkness and everything goes completely black.
I love the drama. Okay, so everyone's blind, but
not you. You have Devil's Sight so you can see perfectly in the darkness. Your enemies are stumbling around blind while you move freely, striking from the shadows.
it's like you're a predator hunting in the night, and then you hit them with a stunning strike. They don't even know it hit them.
Exactly. Darkness becomes your playground. You control the fight. But be careful. Darkness can be a double-edged sword. Your allies might need Devil's Sight to see too. And some spells like Fairy Fire can cancel out the darkness completely.
So it's not a guaranteed win, but if used strategically, it can be really powerful. I'm starting to understand why this build is so cool. It's not just about hitting hard, it's about outsmarting your enemies, using the environment to your advantage, and striking with precision.
That's where the real skill comes in. It's not about the numbers. It's about understanding how combat works, the psychology of your enemies, knowing when to be stealthy and when to attack.
It's like playing chess, but on a battlefield full of danger and surprises,
Yeah,
you have to think ahead. Anticipate what your opponent will do,
Yeah.
and be ready to adapt.
exactly. And the best part is this build works in so many different campaigns and play styles. If you're in a city, you can focus on social stealth. Using disguises and deception, you can use your knowledge of the city to sneak into places and pass guards.
Like something out of a heist movie. Our rogue monk, blending into a fancy party,
Yeah.
charming their way past security, disabling alarms with a flick of their wrist. So stylish.
And if your campaign is more in the wilderness, you can use your mobility and stealth to become a master of the wilds. Imagine tracking animals through the forest, climbing cliffs with ease, disappearing into the undergrowth before your enemies even see you.
Like a D&D version of Tarzan or a ninja, blending in with nature. This build really does give players a lot of freedom to make a character that fits their vision and their campaign.
And that's what makes D&D so great. It gives you the rules, but then it lets you use those rules to be creative, to make characters that are unique and memorable.
I'm inspired. I might have to retire my current character and make a rogue monk. But before I get too carried away, I think it's time to hear from our listeners. I bet they have some great ideas and questions.
Let's hear what they have to say.
All right, listeners, we've explored the rogue monk stealth build from top to bottom, but now we want to hear from you. What parts of this build do you like the most? What unique twists or strategies would you use? Share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. We'll be back for the final part of our deep dive to talk about even more secrets and insights. Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, I've got to say, I'm already thinking about how to fit this rogue monk into my next campaign.
It's definitely a build that sparks the imagination. The mix of cunning and martial arts, the shadow and the steel. It's such a classic archetype.
It really is.
Oh.
And our listeners have been sharing some awesome ideas and questions in the comments. So thank you everyone for joining the conversation.
Always love to hear from fellow adventurers. It's a good reminder that D&D is all about working together.
Speaking of working together, I want to go back to something you said earlier about the philosophy behind this build, the duality of the rogue and the monk. It's not something you see a lot in character builds, and I think it's a really cool angle.
Yeah, it's an element that sometimes gets lost. We get so caught up in the mechanics and the numbers and the tactics that we forget about the character's inner world. And with the rogue monk, there's a lot going on under the surface.
I'm listening. Tell me more. What are we missing when we just focus on the mechanics?
Think about it. You have the rogue, all about cunning and adaptability, maybe even a little bit morally gray. They're driven by survival, by their wits, by a willingness to bend the rules. And then you have the monk striving for discipline and inner peace, mastery of their body and mind. They have a strict code, a path of self-improvement.
Like two sides of the same coin.
Right.
Darkness and light, chaos and order, but they both exist in this one character.
Exactly. And that conflict, that push and pull between those two forces, that's where the real magic of this build comes in. It's not just about what your character can do, it's about who they are and what choices they make when things get tough.
So it's not just a mechanical synergy, it's a narrative synergy too. It adds a whole other layer to the character.
Absolutely. Let's say your rogue monk is breaking into a corrupt noble's mansion to get back a stolen artifact. They could just use their stealth and combat skills to get the job done. But the real question is, how does that internal conflict affect their choices?
I see where you're going. Does the rogue in them want to take advantage of the situation? Maybe pocket some extra treasure while they're there? Or does the monk in them hold them back? Remind them of their code, keep them focused on the mission?
Exactly. It creates this tension within the character. That can lead to some really cool role-playing moments. And the best part is, there's no right or wrong answer. D&D lets you explore those choices, to make decisions that shape your character's story and who they become.
This conversation has really changed how I see this build. It's so much more than just stats and abilities. It's a way to tell a story and build a character.
And that's what we should always be aiming for as players and dungeon masters, to create characters that aren't just good in a fight, but also engaging and complex and memorable.
Before we wrap up, I want to give a huge thank you to LitRPG Reads and Paul Bello for the amazing article that inspired this deep dive. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to learn more about the Rogue Monk multiclass.
Absolutely. Paul's insights into the mechanics and the possibilities of this build are so valuable. We definitely recommend checking out his work and exploring the world of LitRPG.
And now for our final thought-provoking question. We've talked about the duality of the Rogue Monk. But what other class combinations that seem like opposites could work together? What unexpected pairings have you seen or imagined that break the mold and push the boundaries of character creation? Share your ideas in the comments below.
We always love to hear your creative ideas and explore the endless possibilities of D&D with you.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. May your adventures be filled with stealth, strategy, and characters as complex and interesting as the world they live in.